it's not that often that you get to say that you get to have a Hall of Famer, a legit Hall of Famer on the podcast with you. And I tell you, coming up in the studio, number one, you guys know it's the happiest place on earth for me. But I get a chance to be able to share some time with an absolute legend. I used to hear about this guy all the time. I was actually coached by his dad. And he was a legend in our town of Lompoc, California. Went on to Pepperdine, did 25 years of education as far as teaching, and he focused in on the STEM education, which we're going to talk about. And now he's living in Arizona. We got connected because I actually get to get inducted into the Hall of Fame with this legend, which I have no idea. I don't have the credentials behind me to be able to have what he has, but it's so amazing. And then we were able to connect, and we connected because the Cabrillo High School Hall of Fame. And he told me about this hat company that he had, Small Town Hats, and it's in the bio. But we were talking about it, and I saw the spirit of this guy. I saw the spirit of Steve because he wasn't trying to sell me on anything. He wasn't trying to tell me the features and benefits. He was just like, hey man, send me your logo really quick. A couple of days later, I get a package and you guys see the hat. And I tell you, he made the hats for myself. He got with my brother, Rob, for Cardenas Law Group and created some hats. And now they're going to be available for every single one of you guys from Small Town Hats because it's something that his heart and soul goes into every single product that he does. I'm so excited and honored to be able to have, like I said, not only the very first Hall of Famer, maybe we'll say one of many coming, but is my honor and pleasure to bring to you Mr. Steve Long. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Lompoc, California, Pepperdine University, STEM education, and some custom hats. How do all those things link up, Steve?
I have no idea, but thank you for the introduction. I don't know. It's I feel like I'm going to fall off a cliff now because it's nothing's gonna beat that. So thank you.
Hey, well, I did want to say the thing that I didn't say is you guys got to number 3 in the nation with water polo. You really found your stride when you went to Pepperdine. And I wanted to say that too, because that's just an incredible, incredible thing. Let's start back in Lompoc, California. Does your dad, the legendary Coach Long, still wear the bike shorts to this day?
No, I believe he's retired those, but that's funny. Those were a classic. Was it the champion bike shorts?
Oh
I don't
my
know.
gosh. I think
Yeah,
they were bike. And I tell you
yeah,
all the coaches wore them. Did you ever wear
yes.
them? Have you ever wore them?
No, I have not. No, I'm not. So now that's funny. That's hilarious. I remember that Mr. Knowles,
Oh my God.
Don McIntyre, man, all those guys. Yeah, that was. I
I
totally
remember
forgot about that.
I remember Don McIntyre. Well, I can't call him Don McIntyre. I call him Coach McIntyre.
Mhm.
But Coach, I was an idiot, did something stupid in a game and in a basketball game, and old school, right? And we're gonna talk about this. Old school was, I mean, Coach McIntyre grabbed me in the hallway, grabbed me by my neck, and picked me up and pinned me against the wall. Like this was the type of things, and this was a normal. Like I'm not saying that there was abuse, whatever it is. There's no way that could handle today. Um,
No,
talk
they
about the
were
old,
men.
talk about the old school and then the new school, because you actually taught for 25 years, and were you able to use some of the tactics that you that you experienced at Cabrillo High?
Well, I look at those guys. So my best friend was Corey McIntyre and Joel Jory, and so I was over at the McIntyre's house all the time. And Don Mr. McIntyre was such a great guy, but then it was same with my dad, and it was instantaneous when things got serious. Like it was a total suck the air out of the room. Like, oh no, it's happening, and that happened at home. It happened at school, and it was no, none of the stuff that they do, or that none of the stuff they did, and I say would go over in education right now. Because I mean, I had, again, my dad was putting hands on me. Like there was no favoritism. I mean, even in, he was my coach, and by far the hardest coach I ever had. But his thing was, I'm going to be twice as hard on you and your brother than anybody else.
Yeah.
And that was just to send the message that there is no favoritism for my children on your teams. But that went around campus. That went, and again, we had, I mean, we can go through the list of coaches that were just, I mean, alpha is kind of an understatement. I mean, they were dead serious. And if you were out of line, I go back to the thoughts of it takes a village. Well, I mean, these guys, they were the chiefs, and there was a lot of them, and they all kind of, governed that high school. I mean, yeah, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, but that's kind of what I saw. Like there was, the coaching staff there was no joke. I mean, they were men, and they were developers of young men and women, but it was a job they took extremely seriously.
Do you think there's a way to be able to forge men without that part? Because obviously, when we look back on it, and I tell we'll tell some of the stories and we'll joke about them. Like with Coach McIntyre, to his defense, I deserved what he did. Right? I mean, I was an idiot. I think I popped some kid in the face on the basketball court. There's no call for that, but it helped me to learn a lesson that I was never going to do that again. And I mean, as we go forward and as we teach our kids, I'm not doing that now. But I'm looking at and saying, am I preparing my son for, a life that if something knocks him upside the head, that he's able to be prepared for it? Can you have the best of both worlds?
Boy, I think things have changed so much. And one of the things that I noticed in education is, because of both parents working, there's less and less of a family unit, and it takes more and more investment and time from parents to be involved with their kids, because again, people are stretched thin. So what I noticed that is happening is parents just, they want everything. They want to calm everything down. They don't want to teach those tough lessons. And a lot of times right now, what I'm seeing is when a child makes a mistake, and again, they're a child, they're a young adult, they're going to make mistakes. Instead of saying, hey, let's build off that, let's learn from that, they come to their son or daughter's rescue. And it becomes about, that's where they build that, hey, look at me, I've got your back. And then a lot of it, and I hate to say this, but a lot of it is the absolute just denial, children lying, parents lying. And ours were like, no, this is not okay. What happened? Tell me the truth. And I told my parents the truth, because if I didn't, it would have been far worse if I did lie to them and they found out later. I mean, and so then it was like, okay, you're going to take your medicine. You made a mistake. This is what you need to do to correct that. Yeah. And I would also gotten, whether it was at school too, but I also gotten repercussions at home. Now, in your case, when we made mistakes at school like that, I would have never come home and told my parents, because they would have punished me even more. Like you, if somebody put hands on me, I deserved it. And I am no way am I going to come home and say, oh, by the way, mom and dad, so-and-so, this teacher did this to me, because for that to happen, I deserve that for sure. And that has changed so much.
Yeah.
It's kids get embarrassed. Kids want something to be done about it. And ultimately what should be done is they should say, hey, I screwed up. I don't want to do that again. I don't want that result to happen again. So that's what I notice the biggest change in. And the shift in education, and again, not to get too deep in the weeds, but some of the stuff that we see on social media, like libs of TikTok and some of these other things that some of these other things that I see, it does not portray teachers in a very good light. But if teachers are doing some of the things they're doing, I wouldn't trust them either. And we were lucky enough in that time frame to grow up around people, men and women that were the foundation of our community. And so if something happened like that, they knew, like, oh, let me talk to Mr. Long and find out what really happened. Let me talk to Mr. McIntyre. And again, you were going to be in more trouble after your parents talked to him than if they, yeah, I mean, so, yeah.
For all the coaches too, Steve, I mean, because obviously with your pop, like being a very prominent, I mean, Coach Long he's legendary. Like those shorts, legendary. Coach Duffy wearing the same shorts, legendary.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Coach Knowles, they all had the same uniform. Did they meet like the Illuminati, like at your house, and talk about what they were going to add, what shorts they were going to wear?
I don't know why. I almost think that was some sort of from the college or pro ranks that people wore those. So that was like the garb. If you were a legit coach, it would be just like, hey, if you want to look great to go to the gym, it's like Lululemon now. You got to wear that stuff.
Yeah.
So, but that was their fashion statement, and it was about business, man.
It was strong. Did your dad wear them like while not coaching, like around the house and stuff like that? Was he in the shorts?
No, not at all. It's so funny that you asked that, because I only remember that at work. But I remember all of those guys wearing those shorts. But no, not at home. It was something totally different.
So it was cool because we were talking, the other day, and you were saying you kind of found your stride after high school when you went to Pepperdine. I mean, obviously you played and you were a standout athlete and things like that, but you went to Pepperdine, and that's really where you took off. That's where your water polo side really jumped into. Can you talk about that part? Because there's a lot of kids nowadays where there's so much pressure for them to know by the age of 3 that what they should be doing, what sport they should be playing, and they can only play that one, and they have to be that for the rest of their life. And you were one that found your stride in college as opposed to high school. I mean, is it okay for a kid not to know?
Yeah, well, yes. And I look at my own kids, but we kept them out of organized sports through elementary school. They might have done some baseball and things like that, but we intentionally did it because we wanted to spend our summers with our children. So that's how I, did it with my kids. But, for me, what happened was, when I was a freshman, I was 5'3", 103 pounds. I mean, I was tiny. When I graduated, I think I was 5'11", 155 pounds. And I know that because that's the weight I wrestled. Going into my freshman year, I did not get recruited at all to play any kind of college water polo. I went to Cuesta my freshman year. And so between my graduating and my freshman year, I probably gained 25 pounds. I ended up being about 6 foot, 6'1", and about 185 pounds. And that's when I really started just coming into myself. I was just so lean and railed out. And then I went to Cuesta, and it was like, oh man, this was fun. And I get it, but I was in my mind, I was that small kid.
Yeah.
And I just had to fight and claw and scrap. And and the only reason I think I was as good in water polo as I was is because of wrestling. And that was just my thought process was, I just have to beat the person in front of me. It was, and that continued to, at Quest, I had a very good career. Like for me, probably one of my more memorable moments was I can remember getting the call. I walked into my morning practice for weights at like 6 a.m. and my coach just said, "Hey, you're first team All-American. And that was my freshman year. And
Wow.
so for me, that was like, oh my gosh, like I have a chance to go play at the next level, Division I water polo. And so, we ended up having the, just incredible team the next year. We placed second in the California,
Yeah.
and then got a scholarship to go to Pepperdine and play. And so, but again, coming on late, I was a late bloomer. I was a late bloomer in high school. I mean, if we're getting personal, man, like it was, again, I was a late bloomer in high school. So we had all these big physical athletes, and man, going in the locker room, I can remember just, it just, again, so it worked for me. I think there's so much pressure, going back to your original question. I think there is so much pressure on kids and even adults to have their kids focus, or if they don't do this one sport now, they're not going to have the ability to go play in a sport. I just don't think that's right. You got to give kids time to develop.
Well, what about the individual sports? Because this was one that, like, I always played team sports growing up, and then I remember getting around an individual sport. You were saying that with wrestling, it helped you. What metaphorically did it prepare you for in life by doing individual sports?
Man, ultimately, there's no one else but you. And when you went out on the mat, like, it's great. My dad would always say it's an individual sport, or it's a team sport stressing individual skills. And when you went out on the mat, it was you and no one else. And that if you got whooped up, I mean, there's the only person you can blame is yourself. It's like, hey, you're either gonna get better, or you're gonna continue to get thumped on. And I'm not saying I was a above average wrestler, but I didn't like getting whooped up on. I hated losing more than I guess enjoyed winning, especially in wrestling. So, and again, that transitions over to, I think, entire life is the work ethic, not being afraid of pain, not being afraid of the blood, sweat, tears. I mean, my dad's legend was made in that wrestling room. He was a great football coach, but in the wrestling room, man, you ask anybody that wrestled, the stuff that went on in that wrestling room as far as effort and just breaking people down and making them young men,
Yeah.
and pushing them past what they thought their limits was incredible. And so again, I think that happens in life is continue. You have to push past what you think your limits are.
I think it's tough too, because when I look back, I say, I look back at your pop, or I look back at, some of the coaches that we had. It's tough because now having a kid, if a coach was pushing my kid that way, I don't know how I would react. But then I look at the results of it, right? We look at it long term, and we look at yourself, and we look at, some of the athletes that came out of Lompoc and things like that. And it's like, you can't argue with the result of it. I think that I would just not want to know. You know what I mean? I just wouldn't want to know about the I guess the detail part of it. I love the opposite side of it. And so it's tough because I coach now, and I coach flag football, but I would love to have one of our coaches just like teleport and just for 30 minutes with our team, and then we would probably win the championship if that happened.
Yeah, it would be different. It would be.
Do you think there would be lawsuits too, Steve? Do you think that would happen too?
I don't think there might be attempted lawsuits because none of those guys did anything wrong. I mean,
No,
it was.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It was they'd end up pushing the coach, and this is, to me, is another. They would end up pushing the coach away, so they didn't want to coach because they're there about the kids.
Yeah.
And here's the one thing another thing I've kind of thought about is they're not there for wins and losses. Absolutely not. They were there about developing young men, character, work ethic, and a sense, a sense of identity. The wins and losses, you will end up winning more than you will losing if you develop a program like that. And it's developing a program. That's what those our mentors did, our coaches did, is they all had programs. It wasn't about a team or one team.
Mm-hmm.
They built programs so kids could come in at all levels and achieve success. That is what I think is drastically different now. Everybody wants to come in and win. We got to win every game. Every game is the biggest game, and that's not the case. It's impossible.
Yeah. Do you think too that the standard has lowered, society has changed, or people are just okay with a lesser result? Because I've struggled with this at times, right? Where, even in the professional beauty industry, I was in that for 30 years, and people were like, "Oh, the industry changed," and my belief is the industry didn't change. It's just people became okay with a lesser standard. And I believe that, like, when you have, we have a coach, Paul, who's very reminiscent of what the coaches that we dealt with. And I asked my son the other day, and Coach Paul is strong. Like, he's a one muscle, you know what I'm talking about? Like, all just muscle. He's got tattoos all over the place, bald head. He's got his glasses on. He is just in. And I asked my son, "Who's your favorite coach?" He said, "Coach Paul." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because Coach Paul tells it like it is. He pushes us past our limits. And although he's strong, I know that he cares for us." And I was like, and Coach Paul is strong. Do you think that, like people say, society has changed? Do you think the standard is lowered? Or do you think that we're just accepting a lesser standard?
Boy, that's a good question. I think it's a little bit of both. I go back. One of the things I just was talking to a friend about, and it was like, tough times make strong men. Strong men make easy times. Easy times make weak men. Weak men make tough times. And so it's a cycle. And I think we're kind of in that cycle right now. The one thing about, I think people always really like, and these are some of the things like Coach Paul.
Yeah.
Is that who they're black and white, that you know where you stand with them.
Yep.
I think it's and people are willing to, coaches like that are willing to stand by their word. They're uncompromising.
Yeah.
But they're also willing to put their arm around you and say, "Hey, I know this is difficult, but this is what you need to do to bring up your game to do these things." And it's ultimately it's hard work, and people don't like hard work. It's natural to go away from that. So that's kind of what I see the changes. It ultimately takes hard work, and people are looking for the easy way around it.
Yeah.
And I think parents too. Parents want their kids to be successful, and it's not easy to be successful, and especially at a young age, where you have to. You're going to fail, and failure is okay. It's, again, the more times you fail, it means the more times you're trying, the more times you're trying to get better. We've tried to, I think, as a parent, you love your kids, you don't want them to experience that pain, but it's ultimately, in the right setting, pain is good, failure is good. It's, you're either going to fight back. To me, it was about, hey, I need to fight back and get better. I don't like the result. And that to me is where I think things have changed. I think it's become far more difficult for coaches like Coach Paul, for coaches like my dad, Ed Knowles, Don McIntyre. It's become, because it's cut and dry. It's like, hey, we're looking for this, and you're not there yet. We need to get you there.
Yeah.
So I think it's on both sides. But like I said, it's become very difficult for those coaches to stand the test of time, just because things have changed, I think, in society a little bit too.
What failures did you have at Cuesta College? Like when you went, like, because most likely when you graduated, there was some of the people going off to a 4-year. You went to Cuesta. What were some of the failures that you had there that really almost turned the switch on for you that said, hey, where it was just you and that opponent, whatever that was, and you took a L, but it taught you and pushed you past?
Well, we were, I haven't thought about this in a while, but we were down at a tournament, I think at Citrus Community College, and we made the finals. And it was early in the season, and we were ranked like number 1 or number 2. And it was Golden West was the other top team, and we played them in the finals of this tournament, and we absolutely got smoked. I mean, and I can remember this was my sophomore year, and I was thinking how we're no better than we were our freshman year. We got smoked our freshman year by these guys.
Yeah.
And I can remember just coming back and one of the other freshmen on our team, a guy I thought of in a long time, Brian Eckert, was like, man, we just got thumped. And I just said, you know what? I said, put it away. This ain't, we're not going to allow this to happen again. And yes, you can have a bad day, but that wasn't our best effort. I knew that. And so it's, how do you come back and be prepared to fight again, be prepared to compete again, and give your best effort and not have any of that kind of baggage, mental baggage. That for me was a turning point. And sure enough, the next time we faced them in a championship of a tournament, we ended up winning. And we had gone back and forth all year. So it was, that you're not going to have your best day every day. That was the big point. You're not going to have your best day every day, but continue to give your best effort.
What about when you go from Cuesta, right? So you're starting to feel it. You get the scholarship. You're a standout. There at Cuesta. Then you go and you jump, right? And you jump to Pepperdine, where now all the best are in that realm, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the same way with high school. When a high school kid is the best in their high school, then they go to college, but they're at college with all the best people from high school. How was that transition, and how did you deal with it, and what challenges did you arose from that?
Well, it's going back to high school. Again, I was not that good of an athlete in high school. I just competed in a lot of different sports, and I just tried to compete. Same thing at Cuesta. I just went in there with this mentality: is I got to beat the person in front of me. And then going to Pepperdine, I was 6'2", 200 pounds, and I was like one of the smaller guys on our team. I mean, we were 6'4", 6'5". Our best player was 6'7". He was an Olympian. I mean, he was the best player in the nation. Again, it was just another level. I've got to fight and claw and scrap. I went in, even though I got a scholarship, I had no expectations of, my goal was just to play. And then it was, okay, once I felt like I could play, my goal was to then start, just taking those baby steps. And then once I was starting, it's like, hey, how can I compete and contribute, to help our team win? So to me, it was just, again, I look back on it, and I was just, whoever was in front of me, I was just trying to be better than the person in front of me, just trying to win that personal victory. And then that led into team stuff. I mean, we were, that was probably the best, the most complete team, as far as we were all on the same page about defensive effort, offensive effort, what we wanted to do. It was pretty amazing. And that's why we ended up doing as well as we did.
What unfair advantages do you think that you got from an upbringing in Lompoc and the coaches that we were around, and that when you talk about that band of brothers who were the coaches? Because I remember thinking about, with your pop, with Coach Knowles, with Coach Boyer. It's like they were all hanging out. They were all connected. The Don McIntyres, all the friends, like everybody was friends in there. What unfair advantages did you gain because you were in that environment? And if there's any specifics about any of those coaches where you had almost a turning point with any of them, I'd love to hear it too.
Yeah, the other one that came, Bob Lawrence. He was he was actually my water polo coach. But so I felt my advantage was just, again, competing. I look back at all of those coaches, and they did such an incredible job teaching fundamentals and teaching and strategy. I thought Bob Boyer and Bob Lawrence were so creative with their water polo strategy. We had all shallow pool. So when in high school, you could like stand on the bottom pretty much the whole time. We'd go play in these deep pools, and we would get smoked because we were out of condition or out of shape. But their game planning and their creativity of strategy, I thought, was incredible. That's one of the things that I remember why we ended up being better than we were, is just because we had creative strategy. As far as coming from Lompoc, man, I wouldn't even say it's a chip on my shoulder. It was more like I can remember going to Cuesta, and there was first team All-Americans from Southern California, Orange County water polo. We played we had 2 or 3 All-American first teams at Cuesta, and I was like, I barely made second team All CIF. And so I was like, oh, man, I'm not even in the same realm. But I tell you what, I'm going to go in and I'm not going to let these guys embarrass me. And sure enough, that it ended up working out that, they ended up not even finishing the season. As far as what was that at that time, like I said, it was just, you heard about people just like you looked at me. And when we were preliminary talking, like you thought, hey, Steve Long was this big guy, and I was not. I mean, but I looked at this guy, Robbie Boyer, who was my idol at the time, who was 4 or 5 years older than me, and he was the best a water polo player to come through Cabrillo High School. And this is Bob Boyer's son, and he was incredible. He went on to Pepperdine to play water polo there. So, and to me, like, that was, oh my gosh, he is a massive human being. And so it was like trying to follow in those people's footsteps. The fact that they even went on to college and played water polo, that's what I want to do, whatever I can. And Robbie was no nonsense, tough as nails. It was give unto others twice as hard as they give to you. Like, that was the mentality. And that's what it was. Like, if somebody does something to me, it's going to happen twice as hard back to send the message. And that's, that was kind of my mentality of just fight and claw and scrap.
So when you have that chip, right, the chip on your shoulder, when you say it, I don't think if you come from Lompoc, it's a chip. It's like a mountain on top of your shoulder. You know what I mean? Like you're under. But how do you make sure that stays positive? Because you're such a positive guy. Like when we got on the phone and you were talking, you were asking me how you could contribute to me. You were making sure that you were serving. You even, going in and becoming a teacher and serving for as long as you have with that. How does a person take the chip, but not allow it to become a negative fuel?
When I was done playing water polo, like I was ready to be done. It was it was a job, and I can remember I can remember the change, and when I was finally done competing, because for me to compete at that high level, I had to be in great shape. I had to be in fantastic shape, and my mentality was like, it's 100%. And I can remember getting tired of that. Here's a funny story. we went to, I was coaching. I just got my teaching job, and I was coaching water polo, and a good friend of mine, Carl Bloom, who went to Cuesta, we were trying to build a program. So we took our kids to Hawaii, and Carl says, "Hey, Steve, we're going to play a Masters water polo tournament, or we're going to put a team together. Do you want to play?" And I said, "Listen, I'll play." I go, "But I don't want to be like in the pool all the time, doing this." Well, sure enough, we go over there and we end up playing the Hawaiian team. And so refs were a little bit in favor of the Hawaiian team. And I can remember it was a close game, and I'm looking like, "Hey, I need a sub." And everybody on the bench is like, "No, you're good, Steve. You're doing great." And I was like, "No, I need a sub." So I end up going in there, I make a move, and I just get destroyed by this Hawaiian water polo player. As far as just fouls me, which normally would be an ejection, it would have been a penalty shot. Well, I'm literally come up underwater, and everybody's swimming the other way. Like it was no foul, no call. Well, I get frustrated, lose my composure, say something to the ref, and he kicks me out. So I'm swimming over to the side of the pool. And as I get out, I hear people start kind of laughing, like the crowd. And I get up out of the pool, and I realize like what's hanging off, what's on my legs. So I look back around and look at my butt, and the guy had just shredded my suit completely off me. He'd stuck his foot in my Speedo and it just ripped it straight off me. So as I'm walking by the ref, I rip the other half of my Speedo off, and again, it's not a proud moment, but I remember throwing it at the ref's feet, and I'm like, that was no foul. And then I just realized that to me, like, that's not the person that I want to be. I lost my composure. I was like, okay, I'm done with this. So to me, then, stepping out to where like, hey, that's not who I want to be. And that to compete at that level, that's that intensity. And again, I wasn't at that level anymore. I wasn't in that great shape. So that's kind of where it changed when I was probably mid 20s. And then I remember my mindset changed for coaching too. I thought practice is where you really push kids. Practice is where the intensity is. In the games, that's when you need to kind of calm down, have your composure. The kids are, they're young kids, they're looking at you, but where in practice, that's where you need to challenge them, to prepare them for the games. So that's kind of where I thought my shift changed with that competitive mentality is kind of in my mid 20s.
Yeah. Well, you went into the STEM education, which, what it's science, technology, engineering, and math. Am I correct?
Math and manufacturing.
Math and manufacturing. So when we're looking at that, you came from a time where data-driven things were, it wasn't like, when you were going to high school, we had iPhones or we had any of those things. How were you able, like when you started to go into that part, you're such a heart-centered guy. How were you able to keep the heart in when you were teaching and, with an emphasis on STEM? A lot of times it's, just the data part of it. How were you able to keep the heart and keep people connected to that, as you were growing these individuals?
I think STEM is just, auto shop, metal shop, wood shop, all those things went out like in probably the mid to late 90s. They went out, and early 2000s. They started canceling programs, funding dried up. And really what happened was, again, I was teaching a lot of computer software, Microsoft Office, how to use that to take it into college. And then what happened is they realized, kids can't make anything with their hands. They can't problem solve.
Yeah.
And so they can't figure stuff out. So they started bringing back these programs. And one of the first programs that I was a part of it's called Virtual Enterprise. And it was kids running a virtual business. So, man, we taught, we came up with a business plan, and what is a business plan? Okay, let's look it up. Let's check it out.
You could just drop down. I just don't want you in the camera. Is that cool? Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
And so just forcing kids to figure stuff out on their own. And, then we had to give a presentation in front of the school board meeting. And that's, I mean, and for me, I was passionate about preparing kids so they wouldn't embarrass themselves. And that's how I looked at it. Like, I didn't want to embarrass myself.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, and when we left, people were like, man, your kids did amazing. They didn't have all the answers, but I tell you what, kids in high school standing up in front of a group of people and being prepared and to answer questions and have dialogue, that's that's rare. So that's kind of where the STEM took off, and then it led into, I've always liked making stuff.
Yeah.
We on the side did remodeled homes and things like that. So when STEM came around, and that's really based on project-based learning, where you are teaching kids about a concept and then having them work through the concept and build something on a smaller scale. So one of my favorite projects was a bridge building project,
Yeah.
where we would go and research how to build bridges. And then we would do computer-aided design programs on bridge design and what structures work, what they didn't. And then we would take it to, we would build a bridge out of popsicle sticks and Elmer's glue. And then we would, the kids would design it. And to me, I really liked the kids that got into it. All of them had different design ideas. And it's like, okay, well, let me help you build your design. Let me give you tips on how to build what your theory is. And then we tested it. We would stress test it. And the kids got so excited, that sometimes, and again, it's just like a job, in that day-to-day grind of the build, you get bored. You're like, hey, you second guess yourself, or you have failures. And then the day that we would go stress test these things, we would pile weight on and we would videotape and we would add like 5 pounds at a time. And you'd have these bridges that it was 200 popsicle sticks and some Elmer's glue. Well, the best team I ever had was this team of 3 girls, and their bridge held like 260 pounds of weight. And the kids are screaming and yelling, the bridges are exploding. And it's, to me, they've created something that exceeded their expectations.
Yeah.
And I think that, to me, is what I really liked about STEM education. And that kind of led into one of my favorite tools ended up becoming a laser cutter, because the laser cutters are really, they process really fast. Like 3D printers and stuff were to me pretty slow. And for middle school age kids, they want to see results a little bit faster. And so with the laser cutter, we started doing just a lot of different things with that. And that's kind of ultimately led into the hat business, just because I loved the laser cutters. We used them for a lot of modeling. Kids were designing, like, remember the old plastic models that we used to put together of cars and planes? Well, so what we did is we would have kids design and create a model out of cardboard. And so they would build these airplanes. They would build different designs, coasters that they would give away as gifts, to their parents, Christmas ornaments. So that's kind of where, my love of really working with the laser cutter kind of took off, because the kids, you see it. It creates some amazing design.
How
So-
important is it to Steve? Because we tried this. We just had the Vibe experience, which I was telling you about April 12th. And this was the first time that I did it, but that I did this technique, but it worked. And I want to know, I mean, you have a lot more education in this than I do. But we took all the speakers and we only allowed them to speak for 15 minutes. After the 15 minutes, I made it where they had to take and push the attendees into 5 or 6 person pods and apply the principle that they just learned in the 15 minutes.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah, so that, to me, the small groups are amazing for learning, and that's what they've pushed in education for kids to do, is teaching each other, learning from each other is the way that you truly absorb. And so that's pretty powerful that you're doing that. One of the other things that we do, that we did in teaching, is it's called PLC, Professional Learning Communities. So as a staff, we would get in to a room, and we would start collaborating, brainstorming ideas, and then we would always break into smaller groups within that, and it would be mixed. They would be, and they had a reason. There was a method behind the madness, and they would put teachers from different departments with other people to just brainstorm. So often you get stuck in, one train of thought or a couple trains of thought, and getting perspectives from other people. And for me, I was the only STEM teacher on campus, so I was like always the oddball out. But I always enjoyed hearing from English teachers, from math teachers, like what their perspective was, especially English, because that wasn't my strength, or social studies was not my strength in high school. But when it de-escalates things. You get into a small group, it's definitely a little bit more intimate. You feel more confident and safe sharing your ideas, and that feedback that's given, it feels like a safer environment. And even to this day, adults, this, I mean, don't speak out as much. There's fear of like, hey, is that a dumb question or whatnot, or and that's why we're here today. One of the things I'm fairly good at is asking questions and reaching out. Like when I heard that your name was on the list, we had something in common. I just called you and said, hey, I just want to introduce myself and say congratulations. How many times you see those people in the rooms, at your conferences, that they're out the ones initiating handshakes, they're out introducing themselves, and then you see the other side that's a little bit more passive. They don't do that. I think those small groups help get past that.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem so overwhelming.
So take me to the small town hats, because you alluded to it just a second ago with the laser part of it. It's amazing because what I found is there's the plan, and then there's what happens. My wife says, stick to the plan, but go with the flow. And most of the time, the going with the flow is the thing that turns into the magic. And you have this magic with these hats. I'm wearing one right now. If you're on Apple, you can hear my voice, but you can't see my hat. But if you're on YouTube or Spotify, you'll see my hat and you'll be jealous, and they're going to be available very soon. But this was like when you were in high school and you were wrestling, and in the wrestling room, and we'll go back to that too, in the wrestling room, learning these, techniques of the guy in front of you. Then you go to Cuesta and you do the stuff. You go to Pepperdine. Most likely you didn't have in your head, like, I'm going to have a hat company. But I think it's such a magic thing. The laser printer or the laser cutter kind of opened your eyes to it. And then how did it develop? What happened from that point?
So it's funny. I one of the things my wife and I talk about, and what we'd want our kids, is to evolve with passion. And that's kind of what I think that how this happened, as I was just evolving with passion. And so how the hat thing came up is I was doing a lot of, again, I love making gifts for people. Like for whatever reason, to me, it's like people just buy gifts to buy gifts. It's just a monetary value. And again, this may be but my dad was like this, and to me, spending time, me making, again, I want something from my heart to you, that, that I like. So, we came out here. My wife's grandfather he worked with leather, and so we were cleaning up his old workshop, and it had not been touched in years. And so there was some leather here that I said, "Hey, do you mind if I take this?" She goes, "No, I was just going to throw it out." And I said, "Well, let me take it back. Let me try something with it." So this was when we were actually still dating. And so I was like, hey, I'm going to try to make something out of this. And so it ended up, it was I think the gift I gave her on our first anniversary of dating. And it was kind of a word collage that it was, I framed it, and I laser engraved all the things that we had done over the first year. I mean, just all the memories and the laughter, and just, I documented that and then engraved it, framed it, and in there, I knew she was the one I was going to marry, like literally. And so within all the words, I had hidden this text that said, "Marry me," on there. I never told her it was in there. And so gave it to her. I'm actually getting chills thinking about it. And so that's when she was, and again, it meant a lot to her. So that I started doing some more leather stuff, and then I saw leather patch hats, and I was like, man, they're good, they're classic, they're rugged looking hats, and I was like, I could probably do that. So I just started researching the hats, how to make them, and again, just like anything, the first hats were. I look back now and I thought they were great, but I look at them now and you're like, man, that was garbage. Like, I mean, I was using like leather cement to put it on,
Yeah.
and just, and so fine tuned it. And so then what happened is I started making hats for people and giving them as gifts,
Uh-huh.
and just saying, hey, this is your business. I'm doing these hats, giving to them. And then finally it was like, hey, these are actually really good. Do you mind making these for my business? Well, one of my first customers was my brother. He owns Catalina Falconry.
Yeah.
And so he's like, hey, can you make these for me? I'm like, sure. And, again, but he, hey, just being my brother. But then I just started getting more traction locally in the community. And I would all the businesses that I frequented, I would just say, hey, here, I made this to you. And so, to me, I'm Dave Long's son. I can walk in and pretty much talk to anybody and just say hello. And then you come in there with a gift, and that kind of it took off. Hey, yeah, we'd like to order some. And so that, has just evolved into really trying to, the brand. It's, I make I do all the laser and all the patches in-house. I like, again, they're all made by me. And so the process has evolved, and I enjoy it. It's to me, for me to make something with my hands, and then someone to, like, when I sent it to you had no expectations, and it's just like, hey, send me your logo. And then the feedback that you give me, like, hey man, these are amazing. A lot of times I don't feel worthy of that. It's like kind of what I would assuming that's what an artist feels like, is when they create a painting or something and somebody looks at it like, oh my God, this is incredible. That to me on a smaller scale, it's like, wow, they like what I've created. And that to me is very powerful. It makes me feel good. So that's kind of why Small Town Hats is where it's at right now.
Well, it is your art, right? And I think about that, and that's the reason why when I reached out, and your humility is massive. And for when I called you, and no one was listening, anything like that, but I remember calling you or maybe I texted, and you responded with text, and it was almost you not stiff-armed in a bad way, but you kind of stiff-armed it, saying that I don't know if I deserve that part of it. I don't know that it's that good. But honestly, like I was so excited when I got the package. I didn't even know the package was coming. And it wasn't only one hat. There was multiples in with multiple colors. One of my friends, he's actually one of the top people in the hospitality industry. Actually, no, this was the number one, the only board certified truck attorney in Iowa. He's like the top dog. He's got the top law firm there in Iowa. He has the red one. So I had the red one, but I thought it would go well with him, and I gave that to him, and now he has it. His name is Tim Semmelroth. But every one of them was unbelievable. When I got it, I was so blown away, because I've seen stuff before. I've worked with merch before and things like that, but it was like, not only was the quality amazing, but to know that your heart and soul was in every single one of them. And that's the reason why I wanted to make sure that they were available. Obviously we're still working. You and I are still working on the details, but I've actually I want to show the people, because I've got a couple of them that I carry with me, just in case I need to pop something on my head. But it was cool because you not only, and this one here, this one's the silver beanie that you sent to me. And then I've got the pink one. Let me break it out here. So you did these, and what I loved about this the most, though, Steve, was a lot of times people will send you, whether it be a compliment, whatever it is, but they haven't done any research. You sent me beanies because I wear beanies on the podcast. And so you would have had to see that and research that and then put your heart into it. Like, was this something that your mom and pops, like, did you see this happen as a kid as far as having the heart and soul and things like that? Or was it something that they told you?
Man, my parents did my parents never did anything halfway. I
Hmm.
mean, my dad had such a, I mean, my dad was a manager for a mine, like, and we still look back on that. Like, my dad, if he was he's one of those guys that if he put it, he could move mountains. I mean, and I say that like he just had that mindset if he committed to something. Um, and to me, it's, maybe, read the room a little bit. When we talked and I started, I had no idea that you had a podcast. I had no idea of any of these things. I just knew of you through mutual connections. And then, being aware, I see that you wear a lot of flat bills, and I saw you wore beanies. And so it's like, hey, let me send him something. And just, again, trying to come up with creative ideas that are a little bit different.
Hmm.
And again, you never know what's going to, for me, it's, you never know what's going to stick. Just to me, it's, I don't want to do, sounds weird. I don't want to do the same hat over and over again. And what catches your eye is not going to catch somebody else's. So it's trying to, I think probably what a lot of people do is they just don't want to continue to do the same thing over and over and over again. And that's kind of where me is always looking for new businesses, new ideas, and working with people that I can do different stuff. That's what I enjoy. So, but as far as, for my parents, I just, my dad he has done so many amazing things. Like, and I just say it like, he's built a multi-million-dollar aquarium facility on the high school. Like, you know him as, um, a coach Long,
Yeah.
but, and he's done, motivated and helped build so many young people's lives because of that. But the legacy that he's left with that aquarium is way more. I mean, way more than his coaching days. I mean, it's one of the top places in California for aquariums, he committed to it and has built something special. That's kind of where both my mom and my dad. I mean, they're amazing.
With us, as far as like anyone who came in contact with any of the coaches, and especially and particularly your pop, like he was my football coach, and then just seeing him around, he was just this force. What else, like growing up in the household, what else do we not know about him?
Guy, you saw the intensity around school, but my dad is such, and mom, again, my mom gets, my dad is very easy to overshadow, but they are such a amazing team together. I mean, she is the strength behind him, and supported him with everything. So and I think what people don't see is his commitment. They do, but just the love that they have for each other. Like, I mean, it sounds corny, but like, hey, this is my queen. Like, oh, this is my king, and they love each other. I mean, it was, that's something that I I want in my life is to have that same relationship with my wife. Is, she is my queen, and I want to honor her and love her, and my role as a protector and provider for the family. That I think is a lot of people don't see that.
Uh-huh.
The ones that are close to them know, how crazy my dad is about my mom. I think, that's something that I think a lot of people don't see, because they were at school and work, and they both worked at the same campus. I mean, my mom was the principal secretary, but they weren't around each other a lot. But away from campus, man, I mean, it's just amazing the strength, and that's been the foundation of our family. I think, my dad is always intense. I mean, you just can't get rid of that. But the love, and again, every time the other thing I was going to think of, just besides the love, is if if he disciplined us, there wasn't one night that he did not come in and kiss us goodnight and say, "Hey, I love you." Every single night, he would come in and kiss us goodnight and say, "Hey, I love you." Um, those are the things that I remember. As intense as he is, but there's no question about the love that he has for us, and to this day, I mean, it's amazing.
Steve, what's the hardest thing that you went through that you didn't understand at the time? Like, I remember when we were, Rob was in sixth grade, I was in fourth grade. We had I believe it was a 63 Grand Prix, and it was beautiful. It was like a mint green, kind of metallic. It was absolutely beautiful. We lived on Vandenberg Air Force Base on the off-base housing, 1109 Cottonwood. I remember it exactly because I used to have to write it on millionaire tapes that we would send out to sell other people millionaire courses, which was silly. And but we had this car, and I remember getting so mad at my pop because we came home one day and the car was gone, and we had this Pontiac Catalina. I think it was probably 62, 63, but it was beat. The door wouldn't close. The paint's chipped off of it. We were embarrassed to ride in it. When we would get dropped off at the bus stop in this Catalina, you would close the door, but if you closed it too fast, it would bounce out, so it wouldn't click. So you only had to click it once. And we were so embarrassed of this car, and I was so mad at my dad at the time. And I was like, "Why'd you get rid of this great car that was so beautiful? It was like had very low miles on it. And then we get this beater, and I don't understand." And then years later, I realized that my parents were struggling financially at the time, and my dad, it was coming up on Thanksgiving, and we didn't have enough money to be able to have Thanksgiving dinner. And so my dad traded our car for that Catalina, and the guy gave him a little bit of cash, and the cash was enough for us to have a Thanksgiving dinner. But I didn't know it till later, and then I felt like an a-hole, like I do now as I'm telling the story,
Right.
because I was mad at my dad that we now had to drive in a beater, but my dad was sacrificing. Was there times like that you went through a hard time with your parents or in your life that then when you looked back, you understood the real story, and maybe you thought you were an a-hole like I think I am now?
Oh yeah, I mean, I I can remember, boy, I can remember my dad coming back. He went to straighten out a kid, and the kid was goofing around, and he put his arms, grabbed him by the arms and moved him, and hurt his back. And I can remember, I mean, hurt his back, herniated disc. And I can remember I was home sick that day, and I can remember him crawling in. I think it was Don McIntyre drove him home from school and put him on our driveway. And it's funny that you remember the address. Ours was 4596 Falcon, and we had this steep driveway. He drives him up, and my dad literally, who again, he's this massive human being, and he's crawling on his hands and knees into the house. And I'm like, I can remember just being so wide-eyed, like, what is happening right here? And it wasn't about like me being it wasn't like what you're saying, like being disappointed in him, or like, hey, I didn't understand. It was, I can remember seeing this Superman, this my hero, fragile, like he was broken. And I can remember, you know, the months of him being in traction in the house. He did not want to have surgery, and I can remember him going through so much pain and so much recovery to avoid having surgery. And I can remember that, just in my mind, that was an eye opener to me of, just this my hero, was mortal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I can remember at the time, like, just worrying about our family and how we were going to get along. And you, going back to Lompoc, it wasn't a wealthy community. I mean, there's people that have done well, but my parents were my dad was a teacher, my mom was a secretary. And so, and we had beat up cars, same thing. We had a 1979 Dodge Aspen. That was like my first car. We got it. Yeah, we got it from our uncle, and it had been in a couple crashes. And I mean, but as far as kind of my eyes open, I can remember that happening and just going, oh my God, like that was a shift in, seeing my dad being not superhuman, you know.
You know what's wild, Stephen, when you say that, as far as the affluence and things like that, and from the perception from the other side, because you guys, Falcon was on the way, like on the way into the country club. And when I say
Yeah.
the country club in Lompoc, I mean we've got to temper it a little bit, right?
Right.
But if you lived in the country club, I mean, in Lompoc terms, you were like Bill Gates.
Right.
You guys were on the way in. And from our standpoint of living, because we lived across the street from the Filipino American Club. I don't know if you know where that's at in Lompoc. It was we were on B Street. So we lived on B Street right off of, so A and I think it was College. So College went to Lompoc High School. And so we were
Okay.
right across the street. And our apartment was it was a one level, there was 3 one-bedroom apartments, in the one level. It was kind of a shotgun house that was broken into that. And I remember going into the village, and any of the teachers, whether it been the Boyers or the Knowles or, you guys or anything like that, from our perspective, we were like, oh my gosh, this is you guys are on this next level. But it's interesting to hear your perception of, you had older cars, you had the things, because we didn't see it that way. We saw it as, man, if we could just get the Falcon, you know what I'm saying? Like that was a big thing. It's incredible to see the perceptions. As you went to Cuesta, that was one to kind of open your mind. Pepperdine probably expanded it even more. How important is it to get around people and environments to help you see what is possible outside of sometimes your silo?
Oh yeah, I think huge. I just, friendship is very important to me. So I think, I still maintain a very strong friendship with a lot of guys I played water polo with at Pepperdine. And they've gone into so many different areas that are outside. I ended up getting into education, and I look back and I just, getting out, I enjoyed getting out, but also so after I graduated, I stayed down in LA and was working in Sherman Oaks, that area. And I just realized, like, I'm not a big city person, but it was good to see that, for me, it was good to see that. And I saw a lot of different things. And I can remember just like, I'm okay with small town. I'm okay with that kind of, and that's stayed with me. But again, I think just it takes getting out and experiencing that. I think when you're in that, small little town, oh my God, I want to get out of here. This is the worst place. I mean, I hear that with my, again, my kids grew up in Arroyo Grande and Pismo Beach. And they actually, they enjoy the smaller towns. But I hear so many kids like, hey, there's nothing to do here. There's nothing to do. And I'm like, are you kidding me? There's ocean right there. There's surfing, there's fishing, there's, again, but those are all the things that I enjoy doing from a small town.
Yeah.
But I would have never known that was my love unless I had gone out and saw some of the other stuff. So I think getting out and that's the other one that I think kids, one of your original questions, like about developing later in life, is there's so much pressure on kids now to do things, and you got to lock in, you have to do this, but they're still young. Even at 21, 22, 23, you're still so young. How do you know what you're truly love, what you're truly passionate about? And that goes even with a spouse. How you haven't even, developed who you are as a person and developed your own identity, yet you're trying to make that work with somebody else that's probably in the same situation. If you're 22, 23 years old, that's just a lot of pressure on people. So, give yourself some grace, give yourself some patience to go out and the other one is challenge yourself. Go, because not all of that going out and exploring is not always going to be fun. You know, um, yeah, but yes, I would definitely recommend going out and challenging yourself, doing some things that's out of your comfort zone. That's what I did. Again, it was a dream going down to LA and going to school where I went. But I also realized that was great for temporary, but this is, that's not me permanent.
Yeah. How important was it, the friendships? Because you talked about Corey McIntyre, you talked about Joel, that you guys are still tight. We've been very fortunate. I think that Lompoc is this vortex. I still hang out with Dale Shell, Alfred, David, Will Simmons, my brother, Paula Hannaford, which was Paula Gonzalez, Lodi's little sister. You know, I still hang out with my high school crew. Like actually some of them, Johnny Reagan, DeAndre Wiley, I still hang with my crew since I was in 4th grade, but people find that so not weird, but strange. Because when I meet people from other places, they're like, I don't even know who I went to grade school with. And for us from Lompoc, it was like this vortex where you actually stay connected. How important is that for you?
Massive. I mean, not, and I don't know why Lompoc is different, but it is because, again, you'll run into people from Lompoc all over. I mean, and they're proud of it. We had a great community. I think we had great families. It was such a melting pot too. And you were there still, but like the military base, like this is going to sound weird, but we think of all these racial tensions and all of this crazy stuff that goes on. Man, Lompoc was everybody. I mean, it was African American, it was Hispanic, it was, Mormon community, it was everybody. Vandenberg Air Force Base, we had, people coming in on TDYs all the time. They'd be in and out for 2 years, and we would meet some of the most amazing athletes that I'd ever come across because they were coming in from the military. And like a good friend, I don't know if you know who Jay Harrison is. Jay Harrison is from Lompoc. He's very good friends with Eric Pacheco, but we grew up together. And the Harrison family, they had 5 kids, African-American family. The dad was in the Air Force, and my dad coached their children, and Jay and we reconnected. But, as far as I knew, I mean, they were 5 houses down, and looking back now, like he was the first African-American kid I knew. And they had to go through so much that I didn't even understand, because in the military at that time, being an African American, okay, you were held to a higher standard. And then the other one is with the kids. I mean, and the kids, you couldn't mess around. Your father's job would be on the line if there was problems in the community. And so I just remember seeing them as like, man, everybody's just working their tail off trying to survive.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, and, that to me is what was a little bit different about Lompoc, or what I noticed was different about Lompoc, is it was just everybody was there working their tail off, trying to be the best they could be. And we were in this melting pot, and we ended up becoming teammates. And we were coached by these men that believed in sportsmanship, that believed in helping you become a better person. And I had these people right next to me that were working just as hard or harder than me. I respected that. That's kind of why, like, when I look back at Lompoc, as far as the friendships, we had such a diverse group. But, the other one too is it was such a safe place where we were. in the village was extremely safe. So we were just riding around the neighborhoods all the time, and it was like it was literally be home before it's dark, or be home when the street lights come on.
Yeah.
And but one of the coolest things about this whole Hall of Fame thing was, I it was more asking. I called Joel and Corey, and the reason that I feel like I was as good an athlete as I was is because these guys, we would beat the snot out of each other. We played water polo together, we swam together, we played basketball, and we. Did you ever go down to Buena Vista and play dunk hoops?
Yes.
Okay. So that was like the testing ground in the community, if you could hold your own.
Oh yeah.
And so it was these three skinny white kids that would go down there, and we would hold our own, and and that's where you cut your teeth against people. Like, that was your toughness.
Oh, yeah.
And those guys, to me, like, why my friendship with them is just so amazing and the coolest thing about this whole thing was I called them and just said, hey, I'm letting you guys are my first people to call, and I would like you to be there with me, because the only reason that I'm being inducted is because of what we did together and being on the same teams. And I mean, being best friends, and I'd appreciate hearing who you did this with, but I mean, the fights that we got in.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, it might last a couple days, but they were still your best friends, and you're still going to compete with them, and you knew they had your back. But they were, I mean, it's funny. I went to Cuesta with both Corey and Joel after high school, and it was the same thing. We would get into it in the pool and be throwing blows, and our other teammates would be like, what the heck is going on here? And then all of a sudden we went home and lived together. We were roommates. And so then we go home and they'd be like, you guys were just beating the heck out of each other in the pool. And now you guys are like, laughing and that's how once we left the competition, like, it was over.
Yeah.
So that's how, that's the strength of our friendship. And that's kind of how I've looked at those, especially those people that you go to battle with early on. And that's kind of what we did.
Yeah.
Is they're there thick and thin.
So. I think there's this magic, honestly, and I've talked about it, before, where there's this magic in Lompoc. There's this, I mean, and it not all. I can't say that it's all, and I don't think you could either, that it's all great ingredients that were thrown in. It's just the ingredients, like the combination of it, like you were talking about, that combination created magic. I mean, to see a town of 35,000 and to see as many, whether it be, Eric Chin. Do you remember Eric Chin?
Remember the name.
So Eric Chin came out and he went to Stanford. He ended up creating a tech company, and he created a company, him and his wife, called Tiny Prints, that ended up selling to Shutterfly. So you have the tech people, you have so many professional athletes come out of that little tiny town. I mean, you have Mark Brunel come out. You have Napoleon Kaufman come out. You have Ryan Candell. Is it Ryan Candell? Was it Candell?
Yes.
Casey Candell. Danny Duffy. Won the World Series, like ace pitcher for the Royals. Like, all these people that come out of this thing, I just think it's incredible. You were talking about Buena Vista. Well, I haven't got the chance to tell you this, but we played, obviously you go and play dunk ball, you do the stuff. Well, one time, Coach Boyer was there, and Coach Boyer would play with the high school kids like he was a high school kid.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he was, our coaches, I don't understand what they were eating. And there wasn't, testosterone at that time that they were shooting up, but these dudes were specimens. And Coach Boyer was out there, and I remember he D'd me up, right? And I took him and I crossed him up, and then I did a jump shot, and I was such a little idiot that I knew it was going in, and I called out. And you never called him by his first name, never. Coach Boyer was Coach Boyer. His first name was Coach, and I yelled out, "Bob, halfway through the shot of the arc, and I knew it was going in, and it hit. And right when it hit, Steve, there was a switch that turned on in Coach Boyer. And I tell you, I did not touch the ball for the rest of the game. He D'd me up like we were playing in the NBA finals. He bodied me up. I was bruised and beat up. And he just looked at me afterwards. He didn't say anything, but I was like, I'll call you coach from now on.
It's about respect. It's about respect. I mean, it's funny. He was great about that. I can remember and if any, it would be funny to talk about the Buena Vista dunk hoops, because legends were created, or toughness was created on that court. It was just so funny. But we would go do floor hockey in the gym. And I can remember floor hockey games, and we were, again, all athletes, and we all would have loved to play hockey, but we went in there, were playing floor hockey, and people were checking people against the bleachers. Those are the boards. It was just the bleachers that they'd rolled back in. And people get concussed and knocked out because they would get checked into the bleachers in a friendly Sunday floor hockey game, and we were dying to get back there next Sunday. That type of competition, just in all those areas, it's like you came to play, and if you didn't, you weren't going to play. You were going to be on the sidelines, and that's with you and your brother. I remember Rob, because he's closer in age, but he was that young small quarterback, really athletic, but he was a gamer. You just heard about those kids he can ball, it sounds weird, but again, when you hear about in Lompoc, you kind of heard about that. And we have mutual friend, Eric Pacheco.
Yeah.
And Eric,
Beast.
So going back to fourth grade, my best friend was Nancy Ferruto. Okay. And now his wife, Nancy Pacheco.
Yeah.
But me and Joel Jory, they were my two first friends when I moved to the village from Lompoc. Wow. And so it's funny, come full circle. And none of us ever dated Nancy, but we always had a crush on her. She was a beautiful girl, homecoming queen, all this stuff. And you hear about Eric Pacheco, and then he crossed the line. He stole one of ours. The quarterback, Lompoc quarterback, rival high school, is dating Nancy. And it was we didn't like him before because he went to Lompoc. Now we truly hate him. And now coming full circle, it was funny. Nancy would tell me you guys are really going to like each other. You're so, so similar. And we've become very good friends. Once we met, we ended up going to a golf tournament together, and just ended up connecting. We talked for probably 5 or 6 hours on the drive down, and really connected. But, you hear about people, and then even might have been from the other high school, and you hated them because they were from the other high school. And then you get to meet them now, and you're like, oh yeah, they're just like me. They're great.
Well, I think sometimes people get confused when I speak about Lompoc, right? I even have a hat up in here in the podcast room. It says Lompoc, but it's in Cabrillo colors. Let me show you. Let me show you real quick. So, I had this one. This was all. It's got some dust on it too, but I did it in Cabrillo colors, and my friends that went to Lompoc were like, "That's blasphemy." Can you explain? Can you explain? We're in a town of 35,000. When you talked about the village, I didn't realize this, Steve, but we lived in the village for a very short time. In the apartments, when you come in from Lompoc and then you pass over Constellation, the apartments on the left-hand side, right before you go to the Air Force Base. You know the ones that I'm talking about. Yep. So we lived there, but I didn't realize we grew up in a town that did not have a stoplight. The village did not have a stoplight until a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. But can you explain the rivalry? This is a 35,000 person town, including Vandenberg Air Force Base. But the rivalry between the two high schools, you know what I mean? Because there was a divide.
Yeah. So first thing back is, here's the rivalry is, when my dad my dad and mom moved to Lompoc to open Cabrillo High School. He actually interviewed for a job at Lompoc, and they said, "Hey, we're opening this new high school, Cabrillo," and so that's where all those guys, Don McIntyre, Ed Knowles, Bob Boyer, Bob Lawrence, they were all brought on to open Cabrillo High School. And so at the time, we still lived in Lompoc, and we lived up on Crestview Terrace. And my dad was football coach. I don't know if he was head football coach at the time, but he was a football coach. And so the Lompoc Cabrillo football games were, I mean, it's again, Cabrillo and Vandenberg Village was looked upon as like the elitists, it's all these, and then it was Lompoc was like kind of the ag community, hardworking, and it was this little town of 35,000. It was 20. I remember it being 27 at the time.
Wow.
But we were all just hardworking people from the military base. I mean, they were just, they're all cut from the same cloth, but it was blue and white versus black and gold. We would get notes on the Friday night of the football game. I can remember getting notes. Someone had come over and told my parents, like, "Hey, somebody's going to vandalize your house during the football game." Okay. We came home, and sure enough, I can remember we put like wood sticks on the sliders and stuff so they couldn't get in. Someone had jimmied the door or jimmied the slider, and it was off the rails when we came back. They would TP our house. They would do all kinds of stuff. And again, because we lived in Lompoc, but my dad taught at Cabrillo High School. I mean, that was from when we were young. Like, man, why are people trying to break into our house and be mean to us? It's because my dad coached at Cabrillo High School. I knew it from a young age. And then it was just, again, I look at how so much athletics have changed now with club sports. And here's another one. Club sports now, you're playing with anybody. You're playing with anybody and everybody in your community. So the kids get to meet everybody outside their high school. Back then, there was no club sports. There was some ASO soccer, maybe some little league baseball. But once, middle school was kind of just no man land.
Yeah.
But in like baseball, you had Lompoc's baseball program, and then you had Vandenberg Village's baseball program. It was totally separate. And we never played each other. So it just created that divide. And then when you got to high school, it was like, again, it's like, what is it? The Steelers versus the Ravens, the San Francisco, the Niners versus the Cowboys. Like, you just, Raiders versus Kansas City Chiefs. Like, it was just the hatred was, it's just silly. And, and then you meet people and, afterwards you're like, "Oh yeah, you're just like me. We laughed. Yeah. We used to hate you guys," and but it runs deep there. It runs deep.
How often do you get, or do you get back? How often do you get back to Lompoc?
I've been back once since I moved out here full time last June. I've been back once.
Yeah.
So I went back and saw my daughter's at Santa Barbara City College now playing volleyball there. So I went and saw her, went and visited my parents. And then my son's up at San Luis Obispo going to Cal Poly. So went and visited them. So, and then maybe once or twice a year. This year, probably once. I'll be back in August for the ceremony. So that'll be good.
That'll be awesome, man. How is your coaching style different, like with your kids specifically? When I look at this, like, there's a legendary story with my pop that I think forged my brother a lot. Like, my brother was a very, very good athlete, but I just was on the team. But I remember a time where I was in 4th grade, Rob was in 6th. So that puts Rob at 12 years old. I'm maybe 10. My dad takes us out, and I don't know. At the time, our lawn looked a lot bigger because we were small kids, but it's a pretty short yard, maybe 10, 15 yards, maybe, right? Our front yard. my dad has a 67 MGB GT. It's his pride and joy, but he had put it in my brother's name and his name. So my brother, it was like my brother's car. So it was like, wow, this is so cool. My dad puts me and my brother against the car, steps back across the yard, 15 yards, takes a regulation football that we would get. My uncle would get one a year. It was the Duke football. I don't know if you remember that football. It was the pro one. He takes that football and he tells me and my brother, if the ball hits the car, I'm going to whoop your ass. And he, as a man, stands back 10, 15 yards and fires the ball as hard as he can at my brother, and my brother has to catch the ball. Well, my brother, the ball never hit the car. And when we got done, his arms are just like, red and almost black and blue on his forearms because he's catching everything, but it taught him that he catches everything. You know what I'm saying? I haven't done that to my son yet. Maybe I'll do it later because we got a game later on today. My coaching style is a lot different than with my son than my pops' was with me. How has yours differed with your kids?
Oh man. I think that going back to that easy times, good times create soft men. and I've been fortunate enough to have some good times, and you always want, I can remember my dad saying, "Hey, I want to be a better father to you than my father was to me." And I say that to my kids now. And it's not better, it's different.
Mm.
And those challenges like that, like what you just laid out, it seems so far from where we are right now, as I am right now. And how would that be looked upon? But that message that you learned has not left you since the fourth grade. And I think, for me, really my coaching style, especially with my son, and I learned a lot with it, was I was definitely, when I say more aggressive, I think I would yell. So I coach my sons. Okay, if you give me a second, this is probably the best victory of my life. Is my son played basketball. I've never played organized basketball in my life, but loved watching it, loved NBA, loved college again. So my father-in-law was a basketball coach. Well, they had the coach from that year had left the school, and I was teaching at this middle school. And so I'm like, hey, there was nobody else. I said, I want my son to have a good experience in 8th grade. So this team had gotten 7th grade. They had just gotten blown out. We had not been very good. So 8th grade, coaching him, I'm trying to do a good job. I know I don't know a lot, but so going through all this, and I can remember, and this is when it changed, is I can remember yelling at my son, like, hey, basketball, you're giving coaching direction and stuff like that. And I can remember yelling at my son. And then again, I think there was, after the game, it was, and to me, I always liked to talk to him right after the game.
Yeah.
And like, hey, what did you think? And he just wasn't ready for that. And he broke down in tears as we got home. And I'm like, what's going on? What can I do different? And he said, Dad, he goes, when you're yelling at me, he goes, I don't hear anything. Like it's just words. It's just noise. I don't hear anything. I was like, holy cow. And I said, so what? And we had realized too, my son had auditory processing issues. He had some learning issues that he was challenged with. And then I felt even worse. Like, I'm like, how did I not know that as a dad? Like, we had known he had some learning issues, but how did I not know that as a dad? And I can remember it changed right there. it would be like, hey, call him over. Hey, you got to do this. If I needed to communicate with him, hey, come on over. But then it toned down. And for me, I think the excitement, the energy, the competitiveness, having to take a step back from that, every kid learns differently and hears differently. And for my son, that was like halfway through the season. Okay. Now, to end that story, we were going up against our rivals, and we had not beat really anybody, but we were getting better every game. And Paulding, and we have a mutual friend in Hutchins' family, but their son, Robert Hutchins, was the best kid on Paulding's team. They were 26-0. And we ended up in the last tournament of the year. We were getting better. We ended up winning the quarterfinal game. We won in the semifinals, beat a team we'd never beaten before, and we match up in Paulding in the final game of this tournament. And we end up, and again, all of these kids had just been beaten down by Paulding all year. I mean, they were just destroying people. We end up beating them in the final game, and that was for the parents, for the kids, for all these things to see. And again, I had challenges with, and this goes back to coaching, I had challenges with, not saying I'm a great basketball coach or even a great coach, but I had challenges with the kids and the parents that year of questioning me. And it's like, no, we're going to continue to work hard. We're going to try to get better every single day. And to this day, will those kids go back and go, man, I still can't believe you beat us. I'm like, yeah, so they had T-shirts printed 27-0, and they couldn't use them. So,
Really?
yeah. So it was just, but again, for me, proudest moment, taking a group of kids that, again, didn't think they could do something, but pressing them every day and challenging them and pushing them past their comfort limits. And again, to achieve something huge. And it was a ragtag bunch. And we went in there and literally, we had just gotten smoked throughout the year. But that to me was what I learned in coaching my own son, and how I had to change is I needed to tone down my yelling. I'm intense, but the yelling didn't matter. They couldn't hear. They knew I was intense, but they couldn't hear me or listen to me when I was being really loud. And it wasn't, I don't berate people. It's more just like, hey, let's get going. Let's get this, do this, work this defense. And that didn't work for me. So,
Man, I feel like you're judging me right now while you're saying that, Steve. I'm joking with you, man. It's just in coaching, I'm just being convicted in my heart right now. So, do you think that they should give us yellow jackets for the Hall of Fame induction?
do I think they should give you yellow jackets?
No, I'm saying when you go in the Hall of Fame, when you go into Canton, you get a yellow jacket. You win the Masters, you get a green jacket. What would you say to Coach Duffy? You know what I'm saying? Coach Haskins, should we get yellow jackets when we get inducted in August?
If it was a gold sequins jacket, I would be more interested in that than just a yellow jacket. It has to be something a little bit more flashy. That's just Cabrillo.
We gotta get the old, the Century 21 jackets, and then have you do the laser cut patches on there, say Hall of Fame. You know what I'm saying? That's what I want, Steve. So I'm turning 50 next month, and I'll be 50 when we go in. I want the jacket, man. I'm going to get on Coach Duffy about it. I want the jacket.
I miss Coach Duffy. I haven't talked to him in a while. But
Such a great guy.
Oh my gosh. I can remember, always so positive, and he coached me in water polo, but I can remember him telling me afterwards, he's like, Steve, I always knew, man, you just competed, always, and just always so supportive, and that's when I think I was at Quest or Pepperdine or someplace, and I had gone on, and he was just always so positive and complimentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's an unbelievable human. Steve, what have you not told your parents enough?
What have I not told my, you know what? Man, I call them every day. I tell them I love them every day. um, how, and they know. I gotta even get emotional because they just came out and visited for the first time out here. But I think how proud I am of them is just huge, and the what like moments like this when talking to yourself and other people that were from Lompoc and what an impact my parents were able to have on people, and making again, my dad, there's lots of people that don't enjoy my dad because he's intense and he's not afraid of conflict, but that conflict is about what's, to me, what's right or wrong. And if he thinks it's wrong, he's going to stand his ground. If he thinks it's right, he's going to stand his ground. And to me, that modeling from both of my parents, and I think especially to my mom, which she knows, but so the things, she's taken a back seat to my dad as far as being the figurehead of the family, but she's not any less important. She has just been so loving and so, has done so much to take care of our family. It's been incredible and such a role model. So, just as far as say to them, man, just continue to tell them I love them and how much I appreciate them, just being who they are.
Are there little trinkets from high school that don't mean anything to like your wife or your kids, but mean something to you that you have, that you hold on to, that your kids think you're silly for having?
Not too much. I wasn't really, I don't, memorabilia is not a big thing to me.
Okay.
About, it's not even sentimental. And would be the one that a question I was just thinking about asking you is the one thing that I do have, and it's still in my parents' closet, is my Letterman's jacket.
Yes. Do you sometimes flex on your wife and be like, look, and you put it on, you go out on a date, you drive a Trans Am, put on your singlet from wrestling, you know what I mean? And then rekindle that flame? Is that what you do?
What was funny was my wife had asked me when she saw it, and I said, she goes, "Oh, did you let your girlfriends wear that in high school?" I'm like, "Heck no."
No.
Like, heck no. And no, I didn't give that to any of my girlfriends because I go, and when with Joel and Corey, when I had a girlfriend in high school, they would tell him like, "Hey, he's going to dump you in a month as soon as he gets to wrestling season because he's so ornery and mad." And it was true. Like, for me, wrestling scene was just tough, but it was just, so the Letterman's jacket, going back, my wife now sees it and she goes, "You probably let people wear that." I'm like, "No." She goes, "Well, can I wear it?" I'm like, "Well, when you're my wife, maybe." So when we finally got married, she has a picture of it on, and like,
Yes.
it's one of
That's the flex. You know what?
Yeah.
You know what's kind of cool is we got to give a shout out to Coach Duffy. Check that bad boy out right there. That's from Coach Duffy. But the coolest thing about this, I'm going to read it to you. That I'm holding up. If you're just listening to me, I'm holding up a trophy that's heralded. This is like the Super Bowl trophy. This is like the Lombardi trophy. It is the 1990 through 91 JV Basketball Coaches Award. That means you didn't play good. That means that you just got a participation. And this bad boy, Coach Duffy, is up in my podcast room for everyone to see because I am the Coaches Award from the JV basketball team in 1991. So just wanted to flex on everyone on that one.
And from Duffy, like, it means so much. I mean, that's the thing that I just go back to. Those things meant so much to us back then because those weren't given lightly. Like, even that Coaches Award wasn't given lightly because you had to go through so much to be a part of that program. For my dad would say, "Hey, if you wrestled, getting a letter, earning a letter back then
Oh, yeah.
was massive." And my dad would say, "Hey, if you go through my wrestling program for 4 years and you finish as a senior, you will letter. Whether you started one match or not, if you finish 4 years through my program, you will earn a varsity letter. People were proud of that.
Yeah.
Now it's just like a letter. Like, what's that? And letter in those programs, it showed people knew, oh, you lettered? Yeah. You busted your butt. I mean, you paid with blood, sweat, and tears. Oh my gosh, you played for, Coach Duffy, you played with, yeah, they were men.
Yes.
They were proud men. You couldn't, yeah. I mean, anyway, so those awards are amazing.
Well, we have to give my brother the business. He actually had his Letterman's jacket. He had embroidered on the back, and you have to, when you see him, you have to ask him about this. I think
that's
my brother
still
thing. Yeah,
that's
my
a
brother.
Lompoc thing.
I think Rob still jogs in his Letterman's jacket. He lays out by the pool. He wears a Speedo and wears his Letterman's jacket. And it said "the kid" on the back of it. So
he gave himself a third person name.
He's like the Weekend. Oh, it's so good. I love giving him a hard time, man. So with the wrestling part, right? Mm-hmm. Most people, unless you were on the wrestling team, you never got to go into the wrestling room. And you didn't want to go in if you weren't a wrestler, because that was the most stank place that I've ever encountered ever. What did you have to go through in your Pops' program? What were some of the things that you guys had to go through, and how much weight did you have? Like at one point, what was the most weight that you ever lost to be able to get into a match?
The wrestling room, unless you've been there, it's tough to understand. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I was there on 2 occasions, and the wrestling room might have been like 30 feet by 30 feet. Maybe that was the square. Maybe 40 by 40. It was not big, whatever the size of a wrestling mat is, but 40 by 40. And you would have 30 kids in there to 40 kids in there working out for 2.5 hours. And I can remember and not just working out. I mean, like beating each other up, getting after it. And you were wrestling somebody. And again, at our time, the best athlete on campus during my time was Guillermo Zubia.
Oh my
hands
gosh.
down.
Beast.
Like he earned, again, this guy 12, he lettered in 3 sports, 4 straight years. He has the most letters in high school history. He was second in state in wrestling. I mean, he was amazing. But you're wrestling guys like him, and then you're bumping into who you probably remember, Dennis Cummings.
Oh my gosh, Beast, the cheetah.
And Dennis, cheetah. Yes. And you're falling into them as they're wrestling. Now you're fighting 2 people, like, get out of my way. And again, the intensity was so high. And my dad, so on 2 different occasions, it started raining sweat. There was so much moisture and humidity in there, and just raining, literally dropping down from the ceiling. And people, again, doesn't even sound real, but I can remember that happening, going, I've never seen this before. And and again, I grew up as a kid in there. Yeah. And it is not an enjoyable experience at all. And I was an above average wrestler, but I was not a good wrestler. And I didn't enjoy wrestling, because imagine I was like 5'11", 155 pounds. I was wrestling these guys that were like 5'6", 150. They were just jacked out of their mind and just looking at me like, oh, we're going to take the baby giraffe to town here. Like we're going to eat him for lunch. So wrestling room was pretty incredible. It was just, you couldn't hide. You couldn't hide in that room.
Yeah. What was the most weight that you ever had to lose to be able to make a match? And how'd you lose it? How'd you lose it?
I think like my sophomore year, I was maybe weighed 120 pounds, and I wrestled at 112. So, but I was always keeping it down. Like again, you monitored what you ate. I would lose it by running. I would like, again, and this is like at night, I was running 3 times a week at night. I'd come home after wrestling practice and go, hey, I need to go for a run to keep my weight down, and then I would usually the night before a match, I would, I'd always like to have my weight down. The night before, the afternoon after practice, I would make weight.
Okay.
That way I wasn't, because we had a lot of people that just didn't do it the right way.
Uh-huh.
And that's where wrestling gets a bad rap, is that they would be cutting weight and they'd be spitting, they'd be running all day before. Like I knew people that it's not healthy. I mean, but they were losing hey, they were 8 pounds overweight that day and they did all kinds of crazy stuff. And, it affected their performance. For me, it wasn't like that. Like I was always very regimented. I really wouldn't eat too much the night before. That way, the next day I could have some liquid and I could have some snacks. Like I would wake up like a pound or 2 underweight the next morning. I mean, I was very regimented about it. So weight loss was never crazy, but I did see it for other people. But just probably because they didn't take care of their weight like they should have beforehand. So,
yeah. Well, Steve, we're actually going to, when you were talking about it earlier, as far as the hats and things and how you love to be able to do things that are, from your heart, changing things like that. The concept, you and I talked about it, but, I think coming out with something, once every 2 months or once every quarter, that will be a signature that will only be available during that time, will be kind of cool, because then it becomes more of like a collector's item, and anybody who's wearing the hats from this point forward is going to have not just a hat, but some like a piece of art, which I think is so absolutely incredible. I started the podcast because of my 2 kids, Steve, Maddox and McKenna. And I didn't want them to be, I didn't want them to worship idols. I just wanted them to be inspired by iconic people like yourself. Like hearing about you growing up, obviously I was coached by your pop, but hearing about it's legendary. And then hearing that you're going into the Hall of Fame for Cabrillo is just, it's wild, man. But I think the coolest thing is being able to connect on a real level. And I'm going to force you to be my friend for the rest of your life.
I hope so.
So with my 2 kids, I didn't want them to worship idols. I just wanted them to be inspired by icons. So what advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could use both their names, that would be awesome.
Maddox and McKenna, I love the names, but for them, try to find icons. And I'm not that big into them either, but try to find Maddox and McKenna. I would try to find people in your life that you see are successful, and just because they're successful doesn't mean that they're always great people. But so find the areas in their life of what made them successful, and know that, and it's, coming from a Christian background, they're not perfect, but for you, and for all of us, it's to try to be the best that we can. So look for the strengths in people, maybe not focus so much on their weaknesses, and the weaknesses that they do have, learn how, take those and how you can improve upon them yourself, how you can be better. And those are the people that I would look for. Look for people that are excelling in the areas that you want to excel in, that you see them gravitate to, or people gravitate to. Just from your dad, he's obviously has the personality, has created a lot of energy that people want to be around him, and that's a positive thing. I think, motivating people is an exceptional talent, and something that motivates. By motivating people, they help motivate others. People want to be around good people. So look for the strengths, like I said. So look for the strengths in people, and try to pattern yourself after what they've done.
Steve, if you could give your best pitch to Coach Haskins, Coach Duffy, Coach McIntyre, that we should get yellow jackets for the ceremony?
I can hear them saying it now. What has this world gone to? I don't know if I can give those guys a pitch. There's no way to sell those guys on that. Now, Duffy, he could be one, but he's not going to be the first one to turn. But there's nothing that could sell those guys on especially the gold sequin coat.
What do you think what do you think your pops would say if we called your pop right now and said, "Pop, I won't accept the induction unless I have a yellow jacket that's presented to me"?
Well, that's an idea. I don't know if it's a good idea, but that's an idea.
What do you think your pop would say? Like if we got him on the phone right now and you were serious and you told him that, what do you think he would say to you?
Oh, well, I don't know if that's going to go. I don't know if that's going to hold water. I don't think that's a good idea, son. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, and Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure, man, having you on the show, and I want to have you on more. We're gonna, the hats will be available very soon. We're gonna be getting everything set for that. We'll have a couple of designs. We'll have some beanies out. We'll have the flat bills. What's your take? Should we do the curved bills too, Steve?
I would do one of each. Some people don't. Again, like I'm not a flat bill guy, but
Okay.
there's people are. So it's not. I have no preference, but I think you at least give people options. Everybody's head's a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, what I've loved too is actually it fits my head because my head is so big that most hats don't fit me. Where I have challenges and they sit on the top of my head. Which has been awesome. So my one of my neighbors, actually, I was telling you about, his name is Mike Bender. Mike's been wearing his around in the community, which is so cool.
Okay.
So I'm super thankful for you, man. You're an absolute legend. I'm gonna work hard to get us those yellow jackets, bro. I know you don't have to tell your pop that you have to have one, but let's get those jackets done. I don't know how many people are going. How many people are going in with us? Do you know?
I thought there was. Well, I think there was 5 or 6, and then a team of 4. The swim team.
So we got to get set. Well, then we have to get sizes of all these people, Steve. Right. We got to get sizes. We got to do all that stuff.
See, that's why I like hats. I'm going to make some hats. I'll hopefully going to bring some hats out for us. And again, it's like one size fits all. Hats are a little bit easier.
What if we did a BYOJ?
That could be an option.
Bring your own jacket to your Hall of Fame.
I'd have to go start.
induction.
Yeah, I'd have to start shopping the thrift stores.
Are they gonna? Do you know if they're gonna make a statue of you out front of the school?
It might be more like a gnome that you bury under the grass to sell it. I think that's more like it.
That's another thing. Is I'm gonna get with your pop. I'm gonna be like, look, coach, we need statues too. So we need statues and yellow jackets.
Yeah,
that would be awesome. You know what else would be awesome is I had Coach Duffy on the podcast, right? Did you know that?
No, I did not.
I had Coach Duffy. I want to get your pop. Do you think your pop would come on?
Yeah. I think he might come on.
I would wear the coach shorts for that interview. So that's the next level of the game.
Well, those things have come back into style 3 or 4 times, so they might be expensive now. That's vintage. That's high vintage.
So here's my suggestion, Steve, is I want you to go break out that Letterman's jacket. I want you to put the singlet on and then go out on a date. Like, put your wrestling shoes on. You know what I mean? Get you an IROC Z convertible. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
That's funny.
That would be awesome, man. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Stick around. We're gonna run a commercial, but stick around after that. I got a couple things for you. Sound good?
Thanks, buddy.
Awesome, buddy. It's so great to see you. Thank you guys all for tuning in. I appreciate you. Steve, you're officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
See you, buddy. Love you.
cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised.